Hi everybody, it's me, Tia, and I'm here in Atlanta representing Vaxxed TV, Vaxxed hosts, and I'm so excited to be bringing you a wonderful vaccinated versus unvaccinated story. That's actually a friend of mine, and first time testing out the system here, so hang tight and bear with me if we have any glitches. Hopefully we won't, but I'm going to turn the camera around and let you meet my friend. And if you will, just please tell us your name.
My name is Morgan.
I'm Ingrid. This is Maddox. And this is Mason.
Okay, so Ingrid, hold on, I got to turn this around. We're going to have to do that again. We're going to do that again, and this time, young man, you got to wait until I call on you. You think you can do that? Okay. All right, so tell us your name.
I'm Ingrid.
My name is Morgan.
And?
This is Maddox. And this is Mason.
Oh, my goodness. So, Ingrid, you and I have known each other for a little while.
A long time.
Yep. And I've also known Morgan for quite a while. Why don't you scoot your chair over closer to your mom? A little bit more. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Now, Maddox is a little bit cranky, but that's just because he's sleepy.
It's nap time.
It's been a long day.
Yes. Yes.
So, let's talk about let's talk about when before you got pregnant with Morgan. Talk about how you felt about having children, and tell me what your stance was on vaccines.
Well, I was 23, so I was very young. First child. So I, like most people and most young people, I leaned toward the advice of my doctors. And I basically, followed every single thing that they recommended and told me to do. Of course, at that age, I just went blindly. Doctor said, your baby needs vaccines. Okay, you need this. Okay, this is the procedure we're going to do. And I would just follow along. So yeah, that's kind of, just being young and naive.
Did you get any vaccines while you were pregnant with Morgan?
No, and from what I remember, when I was pregnant with both Morgan and Mason, they did not offer the vaccinations when I was pregnant.
They weren't recommended.
They weren't recommended at that time.
Women. They are now.
They are now. They wanted me to get, for my third child, they wanted me to get vaccine, the flu vaccine and the DTaP.
So, but you already knew better by that time, right? So
you should have seen my face.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall.
And I would tell you what my answer would have been if I didn't have children in the room. But no, I definitely opted out.
Okay.
Of course, they make you sign something, which I think is ridiculous. But
it's always bothered me that they make you sign those forms. So when Morgan was born, talk about the birth experience, because I
had a really rough pregnancy with Morgan. I had bleeding complications. I was put on bed rest really soon. I had to have ultrasounds once a week for a month before he was born. And then I had to have a C-section. That was recommended by my doctor because his head was too big. Now, at that time, they did recommend the Hep B.
Right at birth.
Right at birth. And I declined it. And I told them that, because, it didn't feel right.
Mm-hmm. Brand new baby.
Whatever the reason was,
yeah.
God, I just did not feel, I opted out of it when he was born.
Okay.
They did not offer vitamin K. I only Hep B. That was it. Even with Mason, I don't remember them asking me about vitamin K. I never
pretty standard procedure, and it's almost like automatic, especially if you circumcise.
Right, but I just don't remember
don't
vitamin
remember
K.
it, yeah.
Just the Hep B, and neither of them got it right at birth. However, when Morgan had his first pediatrician's appointment,
Okay, so he was how old?
he was less than a month old. We
Okay,
had our first pediatrician appointment. I think it was 2 weeks after you leave the hospital, or a week or something like that. And at that time we got the Hep.
okay.
And then from then on it was routine. Whatever the doctor told me to do, I would do.
Mm-hmm.
We got and every time I would go in, I will never ever forget the feelings that I had when he was vaccinated. It was almost just like I felt like it was wrong, like I was doing something wrong. Like I just always had this really bad feeling. And of course I blamed it on, I just don't want my baby to get shots.
Right.
I don't like needles. I would just justify it almost. And and then when our 18-month checkup came, I even remember having a bad feeling making the appointment over the phone. I'll never forget it. I was at work on my break, calling the doctor to make an appointment. I remember having this just eerie feeling about making the appointment for the shot. Like I said, I justified it. I just don't like to see him cry.
Because it hurts, right?
So,
how many vaccines were they administering? Like when you went in at the 2-month mark, which is usually the next mark after you come in for your first check, right? So they go in at 2 months. So when he went in for his 2 months visit, do you remember how many vaccines they gave him?
I remember him getting like 1 or 2 shots. However, they did not really explain to me that there are multiple vaccines in these shots. So to me, at that age, young age, not like I said, at that date and time, I'm thinking, he's only getting 1 or 2 shots. No, there were multiple shots within.
Do you remember which vaccines he got at 2 months?
Oh my gosh, we're talking 11 years.
So DTaP.
He got, yes. I mean, I remember he got chicken pox. He got the rotavirus. He got.
Right. So they have like a 5-in-1.
Yep.
So you got 2 shots, and one was 3 antigens, and the other was 5 antigens.
Right. But for the most part, I want to say that Morgan seemed to be developing just fine.
Right.
For the most part. I mean, he, from what I knew as a mom,
right.
He laughed and smiled. He was saying by 1, he, had at least 5 words that he was saying very clearly. He ate well. He loved fruits and vegetables. He would look at me. He was such a ham. I have pictures of him where he's just like looking at the camera and just really hamming it up for me. And I remember loving to take him to go see people because he was such a sociable baby. He was so, into people. And then after we got the MMR, he developed a very high fever. We took him to Scottish Rite downtown. By the time we got in and checked in and we waited, his fever had started to go down. So we went home, and after that, it was just completely different. No eye contact. All the words that we were saying, we no longer said. Everything.
And this was after the
MMR.
So the MMR was the one that tipped him over the edge.
Where
you could see.
I noticed such a difference that I remember very shortly after that going and getting him looked at by a child psychiatrist.
So you knew pretty much within.
The difference was just so it was noticeable.
Within 24 hours, within
I'd say a day. I mean, the next day it was just kind of like, I thought he didn't feel good. And then it was like, after a couple of days, it was just like.
So he Lost eye contact.
Lost eye contact.
Stopped saying the words that he knew.
Stopped eating. It was this very significant. As a parent, I always remember Del Big Tree always saying, with your children, it's like you're obsessed with them. You
see every little
thing, and that's so true. And to me, it was like night and day. I noticed immediately that he was a different child after the MMR. So,
did you suspect that it was the MMR? Did you suspect it was the vaccine? No?
Not even a little bit. At that time, I went to my pediatrician. She basically, brushed it off, like I'm crazy, that it's basically like normal for children to, actually her explanation was at that age that Morgan was when you really started to notice when development wasn't peaking.
Oh, okay.
So
all the development that he had before the shot, that was just like.
Well, because like at that age, that's when they really start to like, walk and talk and develop personality. And
how old was he when he got the MMR?
He was around 16 to 18 months.
Okay.
And
so
he
right
was
in that window.
Diagnosed, like fully diagnosed by 2.5. So it was, he wasn't even 2.5. It was right around 2. And I had him looked at 19 months by a child psychologist. So we're talking within 4 months of having the MMR, I was already having him looked at by somebody.
So did you continue to vaccinate after that?
Yes, I did. Morgan has had up to 4 years. I started.
But you were already hearing the bell toll, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
Because you knew me by then. But even though you knew me, I was having my own journey because my son only got 4 vaccines.
Right.
So I couldn't necessarily pinpoint that like you could with Morgan. Oh, he got the MMR and all of a sudden he stopped.
Right.
I didn't have that moment with Luke, so I was still on my journey. So even though we discussed vaccines and you had been hearing about vaccines, you didn't automatically become anti-vaccine.
That's right.
So you wouldn't have been someone that people would have referred to as anti-vaccine.
I know.
That's right. Well, and even when Mason was born, I want to say I had started, like, you and I had several conversations, and I was starting to kind of feel like, well, maybe it could be vaccines. Maybe, and I did start to develop a, that what if syndrome about vaccines. So when Mason was born, I decided, well, I'm going to spread them out. So we started when he was close to a year old. And then I started, 1 shot at a time.
So you waited until he was a year old.
Mm-hmm.
And now, let's talk about Mason's story a little bit. Because Mason had some birth complication. He had a birth defect, right?
He was born with a cleft lip and palate, which is where the face doesn't grow completely together, and you can have a hole from the lip through the mouth to the palate.
Mm-hmm. And that causes problems because of eating and
causes lots of complications with speech, with eating, anything that relates to the mouth. So we had a lot of challenges. He had a surgery when he was
hey buddy, go stand with your mama so we
old.
can see your face.
And then he had a surgery.
Let's see your face. Say hi. Everybody wants to say hi to you. Look at that. You got people watching. And they're sending you love.
Aww.
See? They're sending you love because you're precious. You see the love? You do?
But, Mason had his first surgery when he was 6 months. His palate, which repaired the lip, and then the palate when he was about a year old.
Okay.
And and really the only reason why I had started vaccinating was because, the hospitals, they,
Yeah, every time you go in, they're asking you about the vaccines.
That's right. That's right. So anyway, so I had always been like really far behind on his vaccines.
Mhm.
Well,
Oh, we need to get you caught up.
that's right.
So did they try to do the multi-jabs with him?
I wouldn't do it. By
that time,
pediatrician-
you felt like you'd heard enough about the multiple doses of vaccines at once being a problem.
I was just really kind of bent on them being spread out,
Mm-hmm.
one at a time. I told, that's kind of how I realized that there were multiple vaccines in one vaccine, because my
Mhm.
pediatrician and I had this really big conversation. And even though she is obviously pro vaccines,
Mm-hmm.
she respected me a lot and knew my story of my oldest, and she allowed me to spread them out. She never pressured me into it, but she did make mention that, oh well, that's this vaccine in one shot. And I was like, oh wait, you mean you're giving him four shots and four vaccines in one shot? And she was like, oh well, yeah, that's standard.
Did you let her?
No.
You said no.
No. I'm trying to think of which one it was too, because
There's a combination that has
I want to
five.
say it's DTaP.
DTaP has 3. That's diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis. But then there's also a combination that has the Hib and the Hep B.
Yeah,
and
because he was so out of schedule, it was really hard to even remember which ones he got when.
Exactly.
But we did not get that vaccine. I was like really upset and irate that she had never told me that there were multiple vaccines in one shot. So Tia got me to see the movie Vaxxed, and about the MMR. And after my husband and I saw Vaxxed, I never vaccinated again.
Okay.
And hold on. And I guess you could say I finally was awake. It all started to make sense to me with Morgan and his story. I felt so relieved, I guess, or that there were other parents out. This was the first time that I knew that there were other parents out there who shared my story about their child regressing after the MMR.
Okay.
And
we're talking about
how it wasn't until I saw Vaxxed
okay.
that I was like, no more vaccines, and that everything really I started putting the pieces together.
So let's go back and talk about when you saw the movie Vaxxed. I apologize about that. The door was open, so they thought we were open. So they came in the door. Okay, that's the beauty of editing, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when Vaxxed came out, you were still.
I was at that point where I was like, I'm not really sure about vaccines, but I'm going to spread them out because, also in today's, with schools and, your child can't go to public school, or at least I had thought at that time, without getting vaccines. I didn't know you could do a waiver. But like I said, I still wasn't really sure about vaccines. It really wasn't until I saw Vaxxed that I felt justified, because I got to hear Sheila's story. I got to hear all these other parents, and then getting to be a part of the Vaxxed group and actually being connected with so many other families, not even in the Vaxxed movie. It was just like
a big eye opener, huh?
So yes, like I said, I was finally awake. It finally was the confirmation that I needed of what happened with Morgan, and that that I was never going to continue to vaccinate Mason. Okay,
let's just take a little bit of a break for a second here. Can we take a break? Hey, come here, buddy. I hope that, I don't know who that was. I didn't even ask him. Probably going to hear about it later. Okay, so listen. Hey, buddy, Mason, you are doing such a fantastic job, and I know that your mom is talking about you, and that's why you're getting loud.
Mm-hmm.
And I do apologize, but I'm going to have to say, can we just kind of keep it down? Keep it down. Yes? Oh, thank you. Because now we got to talk about this little chunk of love. So you get pregnant with Maddox.
This one. And I'm, when, of course, I knew immediately that I was like, I'm not going to vaccinate. There really wasn't, any doubt really in my mind that I was not going to vaccinate. Interesting story though. I lost my mom a few years ago, and I talked to her a lot. I prayed to her a lot, and even before the Vaxxed movie, I had been talking to my mom, and I was like, Mom, what happened to Morgan? Send me a sign. I just, try to communicate with me and help me and tell me what causes autism, what is causing autism. Very shortly after that, Tia took me to see Vaxxed. So after I got pregnant with this baby, of course, I'm talking to my mom. I'm like, I'm scared, I'm nervous, I'm gonna have a C-section, so I'm like talking to my mom, and I'm talking to her about the vaccines, and I'm like, Mom, I really don't want to vaccinate, do you think that I know this sounds crazy for me to talk to my mom, but it's just something that I did, to make me feel better and pray. And so anyway, I was going in for my first ultrasound, when you go in and they tell you how far along you are, right, and when the conception was and all that. Mm-hmm. So I go in for that appointment, and the ultrasound tech is doing my ultrasound, and we're talking about paleo diets, and we're talking about our children, and I tell her, about Morgan and about how my theory is on vaccines, and she goes, she was very professional. She was very careful about how she told me and said it, but basically she was like, I would never vaccinate. She didn't say don't vaccinate, but she goes, I would never vaccinate again. She said my second child became blind after a routine vaccine
This was
visit.
A nurse?
My ultrasound tech.
Ultrasound tech. Wow.
And I remember feeling so validated